I'd like to welcome you all on behalf of WUDC Law Society and Cork Roads. This is the EFL final of the 2019 World University Debating Championships. Firstly, I'd like to congratulate and welcome the teams that we have here today. We have Zagreb A, Vilnius,
Currently in the United States of America, we see that when we have private companies which dictate the healthcare situation, we see a problem being twofold. First of all, you have private companies dictating the private package, which diminishes the healthcare scrutiny, and B, diminishes the rights that the patient receives. Second of all, we see that the majority of population has no medical insurance on that plan because A, either they cannot pay a package which can actually insure them rights, or B, they are lingering in a kind of a limbo between getting the national health care, which is Medicare, which is dedicated to the poor people, and they are not currently under the poverty line in order to receive it, and B, do not have enough money to actually get in the healthcare system. So we on the side of the proposition believe because the private healthcare and the private healthcare companies and insurances are dictating the current market, we see that the population as such is not benefiting from the healthcare as such. And second of all, it's not getting any healthcare insurance whatsoever on the level that they deserve. Now, the principle we want to advocate today is that the state should provide its citizens a basic medical care. The proposition is proposing, that we should prohibit all private care, and that the state itself should ensure a basic medical care, for all its citizens. I will analyze these two issues. First of all, I will analyze the role of the state and why states should do it. And second of all, I will talk to you why basic package of rights does include a healthcare in this situation. Yes.
Okay, so why in this case should we ban all private sector instead of just developing the public sector?
This is exactly a good introduction to why is the role of the state. When we say that the current system in the United States, in the private sector, has no accountability in this issue. Why? Because what the private companies are actually doing, they're kind of prostituting the whole system of healthcare when in fact they're not providing the citizens with major rights. We see that in the current state, when you prescribe yourself for a package, you are basically on the insurance level, hanging on the thread whether or not your insurance will cover this or not. We see that this is not something that you as a citizen should prescribe for, and we believe that this is the issue that we need to, as a state, address. Thank you. When we say, when a state actually has medical health care, it does have accountability to its citizens. So thank you. First, the accountability through taxation, and second of accountability through political capital on the level. We say that because of that, the health care which the state provides is much much better on the issue that the state is accountable now. Thank you. What happens in their hospitals? We said the European countries, the European Union has a system in place. We said that current healthcare, the basic healthcare which the state provides in the states of the European Union, is something which is beneficial to its citizens. We say, thank you, that if we have a situation just in the United States of America, we will have more accountability, better healthcare, thank you, and better insurance for the people itself. Second issue is why is this in the state's interest, is the scrutiny of public on the healthcare system. We said that in the private sector, because it's private, the public has no actual impact and no actual interest, thank you, in the current system. We say that when the public has scrutiny over it, and when there's no boardrooms and no hallway agreements inside of the insurance companies, we see that the public actually gets the deserved medical treatment. No, thank you. We say that in this issue, when the scrutiny of public is in place, that the public itself gets the medical treatment it needs. Because when a person needs a new heart, and when a person needs a new liver, it needs something to fall back to. It cannot be $100,000 in this issue because the insurance is not providing the basic right package. Sometimes in this situation, when the state steps in, it's in the state interest and the public interest to actually have it in place. The third issue is the mischiefs of private sector, and we'll look at this in two levels. First of all, is the employees which currently give in a certain rights package to their to the employers health benefits. We see that currently the private sector, in the employee situation, is actually cutting down these benefits. We see that in General Motors currently, General Motors is currently cutting off health benefits to its employees. So thank you. That's leading them on basically will we survive or will we not situation. And we see that in this situation, when you have the private sector actually not doing actually doing the mischief in the situation, we need a state to step in and bring it back. The second issue is that the healthcare insurance itself is having the mischief in the issues themselves, because in order to keep their competitivity, they do form trust and do throw monopoles in issues. I'll take it for a minute. Monopoles, in that fact, they're diminishing the rights of the patients and then taking their money and not giving them the rights they prescribed for. Yes, madam.
So would the state then decide what kind of health care a person can get, or would the state providing all the possible health care?
Just like I said, we need a basic medical care. Basic medical care means that you get the medical care, but sometimes in issues when you have covers urgent, like you have a heart attack, that you need certain bowel. It's also where the state steps in. This is basic medical care. Second issue, the second analysis is why this is a basic package of rights. First of all, we say this is kind of a zero criteria for the state. We say it is in the state interest to have healthy people, because at the end the people are the ones who make the state. We say that in order to have a healthy populace, especially in this day and age, when the state itself basically endangers them in certain situations, such as global warming, when the factories put out, diminish the quality of air, diminish the quality of water, and the state doesn't step into the situation. We see that in the situation, the state endangers them by not basically controlling the private sector in the manner that the private sector should not. The private sector does provide the rights that prescribed for. We say the state, because it did not ensure the scrutiny of the private companies and not set a legal framework to work on. We say because of that, the state should step in and give them a basic health care, because it has failed in the beginning. The state should not fail at the end. And on the side of the proposition, we believe this is a strong issue to tackle it from the side of the state. Now, I will go on further to talk about what happens in the families and what happens to the actual impact of this motion when you don't have the basic medical care. And she will explain to you why we do this on society as a whole. Now, just what the proposition was talking to you, we believe that USA should have a basic medical care. We believe that this is a role of the state, because the state has accountability, it has scrutiny of the public, and it deals with the misuse of the private sector. And second of all, we stated that this is a basic package of rights, because this is a zero criteria which the state needs to fulfill, and this is a development because the state endangers the public in the first place. And for all these reasons, I make a proposed solution.
thank the speaker for her speech, and I would like to call on the first speaker from the opening opposition, Ms. Oyster Dumbrita.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, health is a fundamental human right, and thus we believe it is inherently bad to limit people any choice of how they want to protect their life. That is why we are very proud to oppose the motion that this House will prohibit all private health. Now, what I'm going to deal with, firstly, I'm going to refute the case presented by the Prime Minister today, then I will move on to present my substantive material. I will show you how private healthcare extends the opportunities, firstly for the patient, secondly for the doctors. Then my partner is going to go on showing you why actually private healthcare is way more convenient for the people who want to use it. And so fundamentally we are going to show you that private healthcare should not be abolished as such. Now, what the Prime Minister told us is that there is a need for state healthcare, and that state healthcare is a good thing, to which we actually agree. We're not denying the right for state healthcare to exist at all. So, but we actually see no point why the development of public sector in the USA, which is kind of underdeveloped right now, is in any way mutually exclusive with the existence of the private healthcare. And the Prime Minister failed to show that during the extensive 7 minutes of the So, the thing is that even the fact that we need to develop the public sector does not show that people shouldn't have the right to choose whether they want to go through the public sector, whether they want to go through the private sector to get their healthcare. It's a responsibility. And again, the Prime Minister just failed to show why it is in any reality. Now, we believe that actually the point about the accountability of the private sector was totally misrepresented in the Prime Minister's speech, because we believe that people have a fundamentally greater influence on the private sector. Because like the private sector only depends on the people who go to use the services provided by the private sector. If nobody is satisfied with the quality and in general the treatment provided by the private sector, people simply are not going to go there. They will turn to the public sector, which again we said should be developed at the same time. So the thing is, if people are dissatisfied with the private sector, they just won't go there. The private sector is not going to get the money, and it simply is not going to survive. That is where the fundamental interest of the private sector to provide the appropriate health care to those people who turn to it for such a kind of service is maintained by the people's interest, and that is how people have the influence over the private sector. Now, on the other hand, if we take a look at what kind of state health care we would have if no private health care existed at all, we would see that actually there would be no competition between the state and the private sector, and this would fundamentally harm the quality of the health care that people would get from the public sector. Because then we would have lots of a huge burden on the resources of the state, and we would have no competition, and there's no willingness from the public sector to attract people by being in any way better than the private sector is. Therefore, we believe that it would be ultimately the people who would suffer if they would only have one place to go, because we believe that the competition obviously improves the quality of services that is provided, and since health is such a fundamental right, and since healthcare is such a fundamental way of preserving this right, that is exactly why we need competition to ensure the best possible quality of healthcare. Yes.
Today, when someone wants to get advanced medical care of a higher and more expensive nature, the money goes into the pockets of CEOs. We're saying it should go back into the system to help the people that need it.
But we're saying if somebody wants to have a solution and can pay for it, it is the health of the person who is going to suffer because of the quality of the operation. The person should be the one to choose where he wants to give his money to go. And if he believes that state is not able and is not qualified enough to provide him the appropriate health care, it is certainly the right of the person to choose how he wants to defend his right of health and to go to the private sector. Because we believe that health is the top priority and not the state as such. Even though the state is we believe that people should ultimately go there. And so basically, even though when we have the existence of both public and private sectors, of course there should always be the state right setting certain regulations on the private sector, setting, let's say, health standards, setting and ensuring in all the ways that the private sector is transparent and so on. And that is of course what the state does. But again, we believe that what the proposition so far failed to show is that the very existence of the private health sector in any way prevents the ability of the state to provide public sector with health care for those who are in need of it. So having dealt with the case of the Prime Minister, I would like to move on to my substantive point, how we extend the opportunities of the patients and of the doctors. So the thing is, as I already mentioned, that health is a fundamental right of the person. So firstly, this means that the person has the right to choose how he wants to exercise his rights in general and how he wants his rights to be protected. And since this is such a fundamental right, the person should have the ability to decide which type of protection for this right is the best for him, and to choose the maximum ability of protecting his right. On the other hand, we also have doctors who have this ability, who believe have the right of choosing their profession, who examine every single patient that is in the need, then ultimately the doctor has no opportunity to evaluate this problem, and that is why his abilities are limited. Now, on the other hand, if we let the doctor choose that he wants to see to open a private clinic and that he wants to help his patients in that way, then we firstly reward the doctor for all the long years of difficult studies that he has entered with the willingness to help his patients. And that is why we allow the doctor to exercise his ultimate choice to help his patients in the way that he finds most appropriate, and his opportunity to exercise the profession that he believes is best. Yeah.
But currently what we see in the USA is that the health insurance dictates the doctor which treatment to choose, not doctor itself.
Well, the thing is, just because the public sector is underdeveloped in the USA does not mean that we should not work in developing it. This does not mean that we in general should, that just because we are going to go to all the private healthcare all at once, we are going to get an improved public sector. These things that don't really get it, and we believe that we can actually have public sector developing at the same time as we have the private healthcare sector. Because you just fail to show that these things in any way are mutually exclusive. So basically, what we have right now, we have the fundamental right to health policy, we have the ultimate choice who how we want to preserve protecting public health. We have the doctors who are working hard to protect their patients in the appropriate way. And we believe that we must try the ability to do that. And we must guide these doctors the way to choose their own lifestyle and to get the appropriate reward for the work that they have put in trying to preserve the health of the patients. So for all these reasons, and for all the data, all the findings to show that public and private healthcare sectors are in any way mutually exclusive, we believe that what we have to do is to learn to
the Deputy Prime Minister, Ms. Mia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, on the points what we have been talking about today on the side of the proposition, we're going to tackle one major and the only issue that came from the side of the proposition. We're going to tackle the insurance system. We're going to tackle it through my rebuttal with two main points which we're going to make. Why this exact concept is in the very basic interest of the state, and the second idea, the negative consequences of private healthcare, which is exactly what we believe are the insurance system. Now, coming to the first point, we believe on the side of the proposition that it's crucial to answer one basic question. And that is the question, why does the private sector of healthcare exist? Does it exist for the people or does it exist for the profit? We understand the proposition say it exists for the profit. We would here like to play one joke, kind of an idea of reverse logic. What is the idea of reverse logic? If you can get a basic healthcare package, we would like to ask ourselves in this case scenario, what are the kind of people that are then going to go and pay for the exact same thing which they are going to be getting for free? We believe this is a very interesting idea because if you are getting the best possible care for the state in Houston, we have a problem if you decide to do it. Now, coming to the very point of idea where this concept is in the state's very best interest. We see here the idea of the concept on two levels. We see that this is the protection of an individual. We think protecting someone's health is rather self-explanatory, so we won't be going deeper into this point. But we will be going deeper into the second point, which is the protection of family. Because we would say that when we are talking about this, we're not only talking about social cases, we are talking about entire families. What is the very nature of the disease? The very nature of the disease is that the disease is unpredictable. For your entire life, you could have been paying healthcare, and in the very end, your family could not be afforded to pay your medical costs. Why do we believe this is a very important issue? We believe this is an important issue because if you have worked through your entire life, we believe this is when this happens to, for instance, the paterfamilias or the provider of the family, we believe this affects an entire family, and we believe this is a way of destructing the family. But coming to the more important point, which is the point of the negative consequences of private healthcare and the dangers yet to come, it's the deterioration of the healthcare provided by private companies whose main interest is actually profit. We cannot joke with ourselves about that. It's not in their best interest to protect their health. This is what we believe is very important in this idea. No, because they have the so-called concept, the idea of a growing bill. What's the idea of a growing bill? If you're healthy, then, well, you're not profitable to them. So therefore, it is in their best interest, because healthy people don't pay for x-rays. Healthy people don't pay for health costs. So we say that in those companies' best interest, their disease prolongs. And in the other case, also, because of profit, they do not give you, they want to cut down your medical costs. We say the doctors are utopians. In the private sector companies, those doctors, the only main concept is cutting down their medical costs, which which means you're not getting the best possible care, and we say that's very bad for the individual level. And coming then to the second point, why this exactly is mutually exclusive and why we believe that all sorts of healthcare should be diminished as such. So coming to the point, it's actually on, you're making private companies are giving the state competition. Why is that problematic? Because the resources obviously come from the people who are rich and who can afford it. Since they're drawing resources only into the private companies, that means the state has to provide for the cost of the healthcare providers all by itself. We believe that is problematic. We also believe that they're drawing resources from the state towards themselves in the concept of doctors, in the concept of equipment. And then coming to, again, the idea of minimizing the health package. Since the money is draining, the state can no longer provide a good package for the entire individual, and therefore the package lessens, and therefore the benefit for the individual lessens, and that we there believe that the benefit for the state as such also lessens. I would take
Well, if they want to believe that the state is better at protecting their health, why wouldn't they go to the state and pour their money there?
Because currently, in this system in which you're currently talking about, you have the entire concept that if you pay, you are going to get a better healthcare, which is not true, because we are saying that it's an unbalanced image of the public. We're saying that the state is not getting the best possible image in this case, and we believe also withdrawing resources. It's a sort of a propaganda. Come to us, we have the fanciest doctors, the fanciest of the universities. We have the machines. We're saying that is not absolutely true. We're saying that medical science is not that sort of way. We're saying that the resources should be provided into the state healthcare packages, because in every other case, you're deteriorating the very best interest of the individual. So also, the two main points, which are the doctors working in the private sector, working in private interest. On this side of the proposition, we say no. We say it's bad to let the private sector develop, because the private sector then develops on the harm of those exactly who the state should protect. We believe that it's the state's role in this case to intervene and say, no, we will be the only ones providing you healthcare. We believe that the state should be the one controlling the resources, because the one very fact which the side of the opposition has been forgotten about through this entire debate. When you have a mechanism of private healthcare, you have no mechanisms of controlling it as a state. When you have no mechanisms to control private healthcare, you therefore cannot influence the quality of service they're providing. We're going under the presumption if you pay for something, you will get the best possible care. Come on, let's be honest, it's not true. We're saying that's a false presumption. We're saying that the state should have the mechanism, because the state does bear responsibility for the health of the citizens, because through the deterioration of the health of the citizens, we want to show you that social consequences that happen are too bad for the state to bear. So we believe that the state has a huge responsibility towards its citizens to intervene in very exact case, to control the mechanisms, to also control the resources, because we do believe, unlike the private companies whose interest is profit, the state's interests are the people. Because if one factor of the chain breaks, then the entire chain falls down. So we believe that the state interest to protect each and every one individual, because each and every one of the individuals is the bearer of a certain kind of position in the state. Yes.
Well, the state may have incentive, but not necessarily have the capacity to protect every single individual. Why would the private health companies do that?
Amazing. It doesn't have the capacity. You have been answering the question we've been trying to tell you all along. It doesn't have the capacity, because the resources are drawing into the private sector. People are easily misled. It's very easy to say to someone, yeah, well, if it's a Harvard doctor, he's going to treat you so much better. We're saying on this point that it's unbeneficial for the state as such. We're saying that since it's unbeneficial for an individual, it cannot be beneficial for the state. And we're saying that each and every one individual is the leader of some sort of a progress. They are upholding the entire economy of the single state. And for all these reasons, we do believe that we have shown you the point of mutual exclusivity, the point of drawing the resources into the other sector, the point of drawing doctors, the point of drawing care, because we believe that people's incentives are to go where they're paid more, so we also believe that the range of doctors. We don't believe that only the rich deserve the best possible healthcare. We believe that the healthcare should be balanced, and that the state should have mechanisms to control healthcare, because healthcare So the healthcare should as such be controlled under the state's current mechanism, which we have shown in the status quo. We have hopefully shown the interest for the family and for the state as an individual, and why this exactly very concept is actually very much mutually exclusive. And for all these reasons, I beg you to close this motion.
Now let's call on the deputy leader of the opposition, Ms. Yemka Kabor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Right. I wasn't surprised when I was debating with native speakers and they all talked about USA, but this one
what I am surprised with. EFL final, all teams from Eastern Europe, and yet we're talking about the USA here. This is very interesting for me, ladies and gentlemen. Nevertheless, probably should have expected anything more. What I'm going to do today in my speech, first of all, I'm going to show you how the fact that we have private healthcare doesn't automatically mean that everything should be national. I'm going to show you how we in this case should actually look at the quality of the healthcare system rather than just the state ensuring the state's role, etc., etc. I'm going to develop on the fact how private sector is a matter of fact more comfortable to be honest. If they believe so, and if they choose to believe that the private sector is better for them, they say it is their choice and there's nothing wrong with that. So first of all, what the proposition here came up and say, well, the private sector exists for profit, not for people. We say even if it exists for profit, but it can ensure good quality and good healthcare for their citizens, we say it is absolutely okay that it is their legislation. They say it cannot exist, it doesn't ensure good healthcare, well, because it is interested that people are going to be sick, etc., etc. But we say, first of all, that's a fact of the private sector. There are lots of private companies, a competition between the private companies. If you see that your doctor is somehow prolonging your disease, if you see that his methods are not effective, you're simply going to choose another doctor. And this is why, this is how we say there's this control mechanism in the private sector. The people choose to whom they want to pay for. And if you're being a doctor, you are going to ensure the best healthcare possible, because that person is going to come to your private clinic later on, ladies and gentlemen. This is what brings the whole idea of the private sector and being accountable and wanting people to be sick, etc., etc. This brings the whole idea. Now the other point here, they come up, okay, the private sector USA and it draws resources from the public sector and so on. We say, ladies and gentlemen, how? The private sector gets most of its resources basically from what the people pay their money for. The public sector is being financed from the budget. If country USA believes that it should finance war in Iraq more than any other protection of their citizens, they say this is she won't say this actually. This is that the budget of the budget of state and these budgets that the private sector has, ladies and gentlemen, are not the same. Therefore, it cannot draw out money from the public sector in any way. And no, thank you. This simply doesn't happen. The other thing we say, what they say, that the private sector just creates the whole bubble that it's good, etc., etc. We say, make the people decide whether it is good or not. Make them choose whether they should be healthy, they should be treated in the private clinic, or in the public sector. It is up to their choice. What is more so we say, the private sector in most cases is better financed simply because the people go and pay for it and pay to that private clinic, while the public is normal to be underfinanced simply because it depends on the budget of the state. And as I told you, the state can provide a lot of things like water, rock, or something else. It might have less funds to provide for the public sector.
Unfortunately, like populace is still to blame, and believe if you pay money, you will get that insurance. But what we have to see is that by paying medical insurance, you're not getting the best quality. You just get the insurance.
Okay, now the tiny little problem in here point, it doesn't mean that we should ban all private sector altogether. It doesn't mean this way. We say, okay, fine. As left-winger as I am, I can't agree that yes, USA you have bad public health sector and it shouldn't be this way. Well, develop it, but it doesn't mean that you should ban private sector altogether, ladies and gentlemen, simply because the private sector has all of these benefits, which I'm going to tell you later on. What is more so, they never actually came up with here and never answered our question of why people shouldn't have a choice to choose whether private or public sector to be treated in. They never answered whether a doctor shouldn't have a choice whether to be in whether to establish his own private clinic or to go to a public in a sector or to go and work in a public clinic. We think the people have the choice to choose what treatment they like and what kind of career they want to pursue. And the USA, being as liberal and all the freedoms of all the stuff as conscious, is especially going to support these rights altogether. Wouldn't you agree, sir?
Madam, in the status quo, this choice means that all the good money in healthcare going to CEO pockets instead of going back to the people.
Well, sir, just because that's what we're telling you. It doesn't mean that then we should ban private sector altogether. We say let's ensure the public sector is being developed. As I have told you, the budgets of the private sector and the public sector are absolutely different, and they do not draw out all the money from the public sector themselves, simply because the state doesn't finance private companies, ladies and gentlemen. Therefore, we say it is simply wrong to say that let's develop only the public sector, and let's just ban the private sector for the reasons that I have just told you, that this is the choice of a person, etc. The other idea here, we have heard from the proposition here, well, the private sector is not being controlled in any way. Okay, I told you, people's money control the private sector. They choose a certain private company, and this is the best mechanism which is put on the private sector. The other thing here, even in the USA, if you want to open up a private clinic, you have to meet certain standards, you have to meet certain criteria. It doesn't just happen, oh, I will be a private doctor, poof, okay, go and be a private doctor. No, you have to have standards. There are the criteria. The control is already there, and the public and the state ensures this control. But that doesn't mean that the private sector should be banned altogether. No, thank you. And the whole point about the families, etc., etc. We say, yes, okay, the families might be suffering in USA and the current status quo, but it doesn't mean that we should ban the private sector or only have a public sector. We say, fine, develop the public sector, but do not ban the private sector. One more reason why the private sector can be just as good, we say it's more comfortable for people. It is decentralized. The private companies, private clinics, are all around the place, all around the city, and it's up to you to choose which clinic to attend to, which might be just closer to your home, which is physically simply more comfortable for you. Also, might be you have some private issue. Instead of going to one big hospital in one city, you want to choose a more private clinic somewhere else, especially if you want to, let's say, have an abortion, ladies and gentlemen. The other thing here, the relationships between a private doctor and a customer and a patient are more close when between a public doctor and a patient, simply because we have less, because private doctors have less patients altogether. Therefore, they can know them better, they can remember them better, and know all their health statuses, etc., etc. And this, we say, and healthcare is not only about how professional a doctor is, but also how you feel good about around him, how close relationships you have with him. We say in the private sector, it is much better than, let's say, in the public sector. So, ladies and gentlemen, for the reasons the private sector can be just as good, more financed, and also provide a good quality. And the fact that their plan doesn't automatically suggest that we should ban all private sector altogether, even though we believe that that's the public sector in the state should be developed. For all these reasons, we beg you to oppose it.
I'd now like to call on the first speaker from the closing government, Mrs. Alexander.
Yeah, we're EFL, so I think we all want to be in the US because the US can actually afford this measure, and it's a really good idea. So first, before going into my perspective, I'll go into 4.6 and then I'll actually explain to you why we should definitely prohibit public private funding of healthcare. Okay, so let's first get into this point of competition, As they always say, you have more competition and you're going to have better healthcare because that always works with bananas, with potatoes, with gold, with all that other stuff that exists in the economy. And here we answer quite a funny matter. We say, healthcare is not the same thing as other goods. The basic idea in healthcare is to assure that that person gets well. It's not about, people choose certain clothes because they like them, because they look better, they're flashier. It's a matter of taste. But when it comes to healthcare, it's not a matter of taste. It's a matter of result. If you do not achieve a certain result, which is getting well, then, honey, there's nothing to say about it. So what we're saying here is that competition in healthcare does not work the same way it does in economy. So this is why we're saying that even if we would have a state monopoly, there would be absolutely no problem because what we want to achieve by healthcare is healthy people, which is far different from any other economic system. Now, on this point of transparency, we were told, that there's no problem with transparency because private enterprises will be, sanctioned by the public and they won't get money. But we're saying the following thing. Well, if you have problems in a private clinic, then you might, argue about it, you will be definitely unhappy, but not everybody will be interested in this. But when you're going to have a state monopoly on healthcare, if there's a problem with healthcare, everybody will know about it and everybody will be interested. And there will definitely be a stronger feedback here because everybody will be cared for by the same doctor, by the state, and everyone wants to have that problem solved. So we're saying that there will definitely be fostered in the case of public healthcare. Now, on this point of privacy, we're saying we said, privacy won't be respected by the state. That, for example, if you want to have an abortion, you will go to a private clinic. Definitely, if you don't want to have the standards respected, you can go to a private clinic and have an abortion up to 10. And we're saying that is bad. We're saying that privacy will be respected no matter what, because the state is a doctor. No, thank you. And doctors do have to respect privacy. So there is no problem with that point. Now, I'm going to do the following thing. Getting to the next section. I'm going to do a very fundamental thing in this debate. Look at how the world looks today and how it would look if we could actually ban this private funding. And we're saying the following thing, that right now we have people that manage to pay to get more lives. They're paying to have better surgery, and that money goes to a private clinic which will have its profit, but it will never give anything back to the community. And we're saying that this is bad. My extension today, sit down, my extension today is that life is actually a state prerogative. And this is what we're going to tackle today. We're going to firstly look at this example of the army, because you have the army, which is actually a state monopoly, which is only cared by the state. And why is it that way? Well, actually, the basic and fundamental, in a second, the fundamental duty of the state is to ensure life. We're saying that the state has done this by, the state has done this by ensuring that you have the army which ensures security. But now we have gotten to that certain level of technology and its means in which Medicare can actually be available for all. Yes.
Who and how will that person or state pay all the things that go above the basic healthcare?
Okay. Well, as I said before, all the resources that right now go into the private sector, they will go to the public sector. This means that if I want to have a surgery, a plastic surgery, I will also have to pay sit down. I will also have to pay for the cost, for the cost that my employees got, and all those things. So we're saying that everything will be actually paid for by the state. So we're going to have everything provided by the state, and all the money that goes into the system will provide for the community further on. And this is actually the thrust of our case today. What we're saying today is that the mechanism is flawed, that we have very poor people that actually don't afford to have proper Medicare, and we have very rich people who actually afford to go to private companies and get better health care. And we're saying that that is just a vicious circle. Why? Because we have rich people which pay money to a private enterprise, and that private enterprise will just have some profit, and there will be some more rich people coming to it. But it will never go back to the people that actually need healthcare, no thank you, which is actually the poor people. So what we're saying is that in our mechanism, things will actually change. Why? Because actually, it's all a matter of resources. They have kept on asking us, how are you going to develop a system that works so terribly right now? And we're saying, yes, the system works so terribly right now because it doesn't have resources. But under our system, we will actually have resources, because all the money that is going right now in the private sector, it will actually go, it will actually go in the public sector. So what we're saying is that, you got rich because lots of people actually work for you. You are a factory CEO, and all your workers work on minimum wages, and you got rich. And we're saying that's fine, but when it comes to health, the money that you're going to pay for healthcare are going to go in a system that will actually give something back to the community. You will actually give something back to the community by paying, and those money will assure, and thank you, will assure that actually the poor people will also get something. So what we're saying today is the following thing. But when it comes to medicine, it's not about competition. That you will not get better Medicare if there is competition. Because in this field, competition is not everything. In this field, what is real is not anything, actually. The only thing that matters in this field is having results. And we're saying that the people that enroll to be doctors, they will still want to do the same thing to cure people. The people that will go to the Medicare system will still want to have the same thing done, which is to be cured. So this is not a matter of competition, but it's a matter of resources. So what we want to do today is ensure that the public sector has enough resources, and the state does not have right now the money to put into it. But the private people that pay right now, the private clinics, do have this. So what we have to do is scrap this private enterprises and get all the money where it's needed. Get the money to the community, get for the poor. This is why we basically propose things.
I'd now like to call on the first speaker of the proposing opposition, Ms. Laura Cormack.
Okay, hi everyone, I'm very glad to be here. Now, basically what we've heard so far, and we're telling the opposition, we think that it's very important that we must stress that the government, that the proposition of the government is flawed in its basis. But I will go into this as I will tackle some rebuttals. I'll have several issues that I'm going to talk about in the particular speeches of the first part and then of the second part. And I will also have the extension, which will go along the lines of saying that who needs healthcare the most, which is something that we haven't tackled so far in this debate. And I'll also tell you how we pay for healthcare now within the US. But initially, I just want to get some ideas out of the way because I don't think that they were stressed out in a way in which they should. Basically, I think that the proposition thinks that we should treat all people like children because we don't think that all kids, all the people in this world, know what's best for them, and all the people in this world give away money for healthcare because they don't know what's good for them, and they just think that the doctors are making them better, when in fact their doctors are, well, not making them sick, but obviously not giving them the best possible service that they can. We say that's just wrong. Secondly, we've heard about the idea of scrutiny. We say that the public, please sit down, we say that they said that the public does have the ability to scrutinize public sector more than it has the ability to scrutinize the private sector. And we say that is just wrong. Why? Because in the private sector, not now, in the private sector, basically you get to sue your doctors or sue the hospital that is maltreating you. That is something that doesn't happen in the public sector. For the reason, please sit down. And it's just silly. On the other hand, if you do have a public sector, like we do have in Croatia, the thing with the public sector, where you can say, this is the amount of money that goes in the private sector, in the public sector, and this is the amount of money that is spent in the public sector. Basically, the people only get to see the amount of money. They don't see the persons who actually get treated. They only know how much tax they have to pay and what the kind of service that they get. And let me tell you something. The people who need healthcare the most are not the kind of people that can afford to pay the most amount of money with the taxes and into the financing of the private sector. Moving on. What is basic? Oh yeah, one more question. What is this basic healthcare that you talk about? Is it just the primary care? Is it primary and secondary care? I sure know that it's not palliative healthcare, and that is something that is needed the most in the cases in which public healthcare should function the best, in a sense. And finally, coming from second part, we've heard that there is this money that they think about rearranging, to relocate it, to take the money out of the private sector and put it into the public sector, because obviously that makes sense. But they don't take into account that the money that is spent in the private sector is spent on specific services. The people who give out this money because they know that they're paying for an X-ray. They know that they're paying for this, for that, in this particular situation. They're not the ones who are willing to give the same amount of money into a fund in somewhere where someone else is going to profit from it the most, and they'll be the ones who are having to wait in queues, wait in line, and wait for their turn, just like everyone else, when no one else is giving in the same amount of money as they are. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Madam, choice exists as long as it doesn't hurt other people. Today, the choice of private hurts everyone that can't afford everything you're talking about.
Right. So basically, we say that the choice is, this is the idea that's coming from the side of the proposition. The public sector is hurt because all the money that would normally go into the public sector now goes into the private sector. I will tell you about why this is wrong a bit later. But first off, I will tell you more about the people who need this healthcare the most. The people who need this kind of healthcare the most are the people who are terminally ill or who have chronic diseases and and are therefore unable to work the money off, to work for the money which they will then have to be spent, which will then have to be given away for the public sector of healthcare, which will then pay for their care. This is why these people cannot afford to pay for private care. And we say, yes, these people need the protection. We are okay with the idea, with the socialist ideas coming from the side of the proposition that say we should all take care of the society because the society as a whole needs to function. But we say that pensioners are not the one who are going to be giving in the most amount of money. And we also say that the people who are healthy and who can afford to pay a lot of money are not going to be happy with money being taken away just from them for services that someone else is going to be using up. We say that's a grand idea, but we just say that because they will be the ones that will have to wait in a queue just like everyone else. We say that if these people are okay with paying, that's fine. But we say we should make everyone pay the same amount of money, because that's what happens when you have a public sector and a private sector existing in the same system. Then everyone in the public sector, like everyone can get the basic healthcare in the public sector, but can then go into private if they want a service above. And then in that case, we say everyone should not give like a vast amount of money to go into this whole sector, because if you have the whole state pay, if you have all the people giving away some of the money, putting away some of the money for everyone to benefit from, we say that's grand. We say that's an idea that we can stand for. But we also say that if someone needs, for instance, palliative care, which is crucial in patients who are terminally ill, but because if we have patients who do need this sort of care, these patients need to have the options of going to private sector, of choosing to have the dignified life that they should. Because this is how we pay for the sector, for the private sector, if we decide to pay for it. The basic supposition coming from the side of the government is that all the money will go into this private sector. We say no. We say that the amount of money that is going to go into the private sector, even if you do have it into the public sector, if you cut down the private sector, will be significantly lower. Why? Because then everyone will have to wait in queues. And because then everyone will say, why do I have to pay for something that I'm not really using up? Why do I have to be the 50th one in line for an X-ray if I can get it? It's like 2 years ago, I could have gotten it from a private physician. And if I can get it from like somewhere abroad, if I can get it from somewhere else, if I can have someone else doing it for me, then we're not going to be spending money that will go off to other people, because we just don't support this idea of socialism. And for all these reasons, we say that the government is wrong, and the position is right. So for all these reasons, for all that, vote off.
I'd like to call on the opposition vote.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, the debate today is not about the left or right. It's not about socialism. The debate today is about the basic idea that your choices should not hurt others. The debate today is about the basic idea that when your choices hurt the chances of life to others, the state needs to step in, and that is what the government is advocating today. Now, what we're simply stating today is that the prerogative of the state is definitely and should definitely be life. The state defends your life, like it or not. It has the army, it has the police, and it has decided that it and only it should do this in order to ensure it as best as it can, and in order for it to not be threatened from other places. We believe the same standards should be applied to health. And what have we heard in today's debate? I'll go through the various things brought up in the debate, and I'll come down to the end question of whether life in this way should be the state's prerogative, and if the life is the state's prerogative, then should it extend to the measure proposed before the House today. Now, let's look at what we've been told. We've been told by the government why healthcare is good for the people. We've seen how it allows for all of the progress that we can achieve, for all of the profitability that we're allowed, for all of the everything the state essentially needs to go after on the basis of people being healthy. No, thank you, madam. And then we've been told these things. We've been told well, patients should have a choice. Again, what happens in the status quo in the USA where we're placing this moment? when people decide to go to a private place, they decide that they will pay more than their service, they will also pay the profit that the company agrees, and they decide that the money that comes from this shall go into the pockets of the CEO organizing this business. What do they choose in consequence? They choose in consequence that their money will go to businessmen, that their money will not go to helping other people. And when we get no thank you, we get to the point in which the CEO that paid for their plastic surgery, for their wives to have, or for their husbands to have a nicer nose that they like, we get to the point in which people in their factory are getting sicker because of the fact of what they have to do, that none of the money that they're paying in consequence afterwards for the nice nose surgery is going back to the same people, getting worse and worse off with Medicare. And throughout the whole debate, the opposition has shamelessly invoked the state of today's Medicare to say that Medicare will not work in the future. That's what we're doing. Where is all the good money going? Where is all the good money in Medicare going? It's going to these places, to these private places, and not back to the people. After we propose the motion, all the good money goes back into the system. It allows for enough doctors. It allows for doctors to finally really do their job and really cure people because they really have access to all the resources they need. That's what we're providing for. That's what our measure does. So what else?
So, the more private sector gets profit, the more it pays taxes, which goes to the state and better as well as your public sector.
Yeah, the minimum, the low amount of taxes that is paid by the public sector is nothing in comparison to the fact that we would provide provision in which all of the money that goes to this comes back into the system, to the morality of the fact that it goes back to giving the basic needs of people. What we've said is we want to give people decency, we want to give them basic health, we want to give them real health. And we're saying that whoever wants more should be able to contribute to what everyone who requires basic health should receive. And what we're essentially saying today is that this has to be achieved right now. That we've come to the point in which we can afford it. We've come to the time that we have the resources, if put into the cycle, help everyone to get along, and who wants more can get more, while also helping everyone at the base. Now, what we also told you is this whole idea that we have doctors who can pick to do their job in the best way. That's what we're saying. We're saying all doctors should do their job in the best possible way. Which means all doctors should have access to resources, which means all doctors, public, that would all be public in our pockets, would have access to resources, not just the ones going to the private clinics and being forced to have all these things that happen for profit, and we don't want to have medicine happening for profit, that are forced to do all these things in order to provide, well, discretion and maybe extending a bit the boundaries of what they actually term for abortion is, and things like that. We do not think all these things should happen. Sit down. Now, what we essentially told you today, and we've been brought, and we've otherwise been told by psychologists, is that the people that actually need all this healthcare thing we're providing are the terminally ill people who cannot end up in working to pay for what they need. And it's essentially given us this very weird analysis in which the status quo really helps people that cannot work and cannot afford private care. If they cannot work and cannot afford private care, how do they end up having it? What we're saying, ladies and gentlemen, today is that even this person who is terminally ill and cannot work will be provided for. Will be provided for by the others who can work, will be provided for by the others who maybe received from him while he was able to work, maybe from the community that he helped, from the community that he contributed to. We're saying that this person will finally be provided for. Now, at the end of the day, we told you that the life is the state's prerogative. We've told you that this is the limit that we need to go beyond. This is the point where we reach. And we believe, yes, the U.S. today can afford this matter.
For whatever reason the state fails to provide private health care, where do those people go then?
Status quo, public doctors can get sued, hospitals do pay for practice, all these things do happen, that is not the issue. What we're saying, however, is that the overall quality does increase, because what happens is that we do not have just the top people affording good health care and the lower people getting poorer and poorer. What we're saying, we need a system that is self-sufficient, that pays for itself. The people asking for the advanced medical care also provide for the basic care that people may not afford in the status quo. So that's what we're saying today. No, thank you. Now, we're saying the good money should stay in the system. We're saying the people doing all of this should give back to the people. We're saying life is the state's prerogative. The state cannot let us continue to work in a system in which people's choice to have it as best as they can is hurting everyone else that is contributing to them being successful. We have all the people contributing to them being successful, we have them profiting from this, and we have them, in consequence, after all of this, hurting them more by not giving back in any way to the system, by promoting the private companies. The private companies then get to be the good ones. Then everybody that has any money goes to the private ones, and what we have at the end of the day is that anyone who cannot afford it, and anyone who can't afford the spiraling increase of the private prices, has to go away, has to leave, has to take Medicare that is beyond the decency level. We believe that the decency level will be achieved when when everybody is forced to contribute, when we no longer have healing people for profit. We believe that doctors and patients and healthcare is not about competition. It's about getting to the end result of healing as many people as possible. It's getting to the end result of having a society that is healthy enough to function. We believe that our proposition today clearly achieves that. So therefore, we beg you to propose that we are all healthy in an equitable way. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the proposition for all their speeches and the opposition to it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, let me just greet you all and say it's really an honor to be the last speaker of this debate. In my speech, I will go from the beginning to the end, what has happened and what are the crucial things that the government has done wrong, and I believe that those are the things that have not proven to us that this what they are prohibiting is actually something that we should do and will actually make this world better, and by the words of the second speaker of the government, healthier. The problem that the first government saw in the very beginning is the United States problem, and the fact that there is no basic healthcare. As their position, we did not dispute that from the very beginning should there be a basic healthcare in the country or not. What we were trying to ask them all along from the beginning to the end, and I don't believe that the answer was actually brought in front of us, is the fact that there is no basic health actually in a way being solved by removing everything else you have beyond that is actually necessary to people. But we have heard, so I believe that the first government had like an eminent problem. They saw one problem and solved it, with actually creating another one that is actually greater, and that is that you will have a whole bunch of people that are actually not standing in the queues in public care because they can afford a private one, and they are lowering the queues that actually exist in the public one because of affording private ones. So we do believe that there is a possibility that the United States of America needs basic health care, but we do not see that how it was shown to us that it is mutually actually excluded with what we have said. And yes, I will go to you now. The second speaker then, actually, the second government has actually changed the big effect. And then they said, the question that was raised in front of us, and I think it's a very important question, I raised it in 2 points. Not because I'm a cheerleader, it's because I think it's very important. That is the question of money. Where are we taking money? The first government didn't see a problem of money. They just said that we would only take care of basic healthcare, which I don't believe is actually connected to this motion. But the second one actually saw that problem, and what they said in all of that is, we would transfer that money that goes now into private to public. What we are asking you is, where is the righteousness there? Where is the fairness and equality here? Because as we all could agree on the fact, no, thank you, both of you, we could all agree on the fact that we all want to be healthy. But where is the sense of me paying for something I will not actually do to have one day? But that is not the main problem, no, thank you, both of you. The main problem is that you have to understand one single thing. Now you have a certain amount of people that can actually afford going to private healthcare. Those are the people that are not standing in line in waiting rooms that you already have rights to pay. Thank you. And that are the people that are actually not creating a bigger line in queue that we do not have to deal with. Now what we would do is put all that people in the waiting room, create a bigger mass, and take money from them because other people don't have it. That's what our standard said, and that's what the government, I will take you in a second, that's what the government section did not do. What we were trying to explain to you, that you have people that actually have no money, and they are not the ones that will pay, so you created and engaged in the same problem that you already did have, only larger because there are no more private possibilities to go to. Yes, sir.
Madam, you're ignoring the fact that when all the good money is funneled back into the unique system, nobody has to stand in lines anymore because we can afford enough doctors.
Thank you, sir, but as a country, and you are actually arguing you're not a socialist, but you cannot take money from certain people and not from others, and actually have it to be in certain, to have a certain goal that will be not for everyone, because the fact is, when you, that is the second part of what we were saying, is when you go to a certain doctor in a private hospital, well, thank you, then you go to a doctor that will actually cure you in a certain problem that you have, in a certain disease. You do not give your money for everything and for everybody, but for yourself and for what you do. What the government, what is actually a shame, and this is like really from the beginning to the end, the shame of this government, is the fact that they believe that saying something is, that it's enough to say that something is hurting something and not to prove it. So they are saying you're hurting the choice of another human being because you go to private hospitals and they can't do that. Well, I say it's a shame because that way it would be a shame actually for me to buy a better car if another person can have it. And that's the second government answers on that, saying health is more important. Of course it is, but we are asking you, how do you actually make better this problem of thank you, that you actually already do have? You have a problem that as a state, as a system, you pay for a basic service, there is not even that. We can agree upon actually paying for that. Could you pay for more? Couldn't the country pay for more if it was possible? It is not possible. The first government ignores it and does not see it as impossible, but they do not actually worry about it because they worry about basic health. The second one is trying to actually solve the solution by taking away money from certain people that actually do have it, for all the people that don't and do have it. We see that as a large problem that will actually not solve this problem. First of all, you will have people not wanting to pay. What they're saying is you have private companies that actually earn a lot of money. The second government, said in his last speech, you actually give money to a business. This is what actually they have a problem with. It goes to a business. Well, sorry, sir, but you're not giving it to anyone. You're not giving it to like anyone. You are giving it to a doctor. Will that doctor kill somebody again tomorrow? He will. Will that doctor save another life other than yours? He will. Is that money done not for people? For who is that money done? Of course he earns a certain amount for himself. That's what he's doing. That's what we're all doing. And they do actually pay taxation, as we said in the points of information of your position. So it is actually what the government... Yes, sir.
Sir, sorry, you seem to be unaware of the fact that most of that money goes to the guy's boss and not to the doctor. We're saying it should all go to the doctor and to the medicine and to the people.
Thank you, sir. And who does the money go when you give it to the hospital, when the country gives it to the hospital? It also goes to the bosses and managers of the hospital and to the doctors. This is actually the policy of the market. This is how employers and employees actually work. It is actually the same thing, but what you are actually trying to dispute is this a means that goes to something valid and for the people? And I'm saying yes. This doctor will heal tomorrow, this doctor will heal the day next tomorrow, and he will heal more than one people. He will heal every day. So yes, we do give money to them, and he doesn't spend it only on expensive cars. He's spending a lot more because he wants to have a good equipment so that he can actually be competitive with the first opposition already said towards the other public state companies. We believe that from the very beginning, it was supposed to be shown to us why to prohibit something, and how, like first, where is the problem? How is this solving the problem? And is this actually hurting anyone? The second government tried to prove to us that it's hurting other people's choice. We do not see that actually is hurting. We all have the choice to go to the public health care. Who can afford a private one actually goes to the private one, and it is a remedy given to all of us according to how much we work. We have shown to you that people that have no money are actually the ones that are not going to pay for it. So actually you are expecting for the government is expecting for their motion that which one will pay for the poor ones. We think it's a great idea, but it actually doesn't work in 2020. Am I done? We haven't heard any justifiable reason to prohibit something this important in the central we are willing to support for all those reasons. I'd like to take a motion.
You've been great throughout the whole tournament, and I